biology just as we are looking at this data today. And again, my name's John Hutcheson, and I'm with Merck Animal Health. And we'll kind of go through this through the calf data as well as some feeder data, and then again, leave some time for some questions afterwards. So the objective of what we tried to do here was to identify animal characteristics and value-added practices that we in the beef industry implement on our operations and how those affect calf and feeder prices in 2019. So let's jump into the calf sales. There were 6,942 lots, which represented a little over 900,000 head of cattle across 25 different auctions. So these auctions go anywhere from, I believe the first one's about January 6th, and the last one is about December 17th. So it spans the entire year. And again, it overall, I think there was over 1.5 million head auctioned through the Superior Livestock Sales System. On this calf sales that we're going to talk about, these 6,942 lots, the weight range from 250 to 800 pounds with a mean of 575 pounds. And the average price in 2019 of these calves, both heifers, steers alike, were on average $154 a hundredweight. So to kind of give you guys where we're at with the 2019 sales data, some descriptive statistics. So before I talk about the things that are different, there is one animal factor that was not different. So a little different way to think about this, but when you look at the national calf model, as we look at just calves, the 6,942 lots, those that were implanted or those that were not implanted, there was not a significant effect on price. I know there's a lot of conversation out there related to implanting cattle, particularly calves, and what that might do to the buyers' justification for price or not a higher price or a lower price. I want you all to be aware that the use of that technology adds 25 pounds of weaning weight, and so it's an extremely easy technology to implement with calves when it comes to increasing margin on your operation. And so every year with the Superior data, we survey people, they say whether yes or no, implanted or not, and it's revealed to the buyers when they can see that. And so this year in 2019, there was no significant difference on price. So implanted cattle brought the exact same price as non-implanted cattle. And this is not unusual. If you look at the last 6 years of the Superior data, going back to 2013, you can see never significant differences, and you can see most of the time it hovers right around zero. So again, just something to think about as it relates to what was not different when it comes to this analysis. So let's jump into some of the things that were different. And these are some of the things you as cattle producers can think about. A lot of this is intuitive. A lot of it I know most of you already know. It's just kind of rehashing it, and better yet, putting some economics to it to show you what opportunities you might have if you're not doing some of these practices. If you do, what the reward might be, particularly as it relates to the database we're talking about here within Superior Livestock Sales. So we'll talk a little bit about weight variation. That's obviously if the lots are uneven or very even. As you can imagine, less variation is better. When we talk about flesh, those that have heavy to medium flesh are getting more discounted than those that have less flesh. When you talk about gender, I don't think it's any secret. Steers bring more than mixed lots, bring more than heifers. We'll talk a little bit about it. Cattle with horns, bring back cattle with horns are a discount. We'll talk about breed types, and we'll talk a little bit about, whether they got Holstein genetics or Continental or Brahman, as well as English, and we'll sort out some of those things. We'll talk about the different Vac programs and what value they add to a cattle producer. Not only we know the value they add as a production tool to better immunize and better prepare those cattle for their next stage of production, but we'll again put some economics to it. We'll talk a little bit about NHTC, which is the non-hormone treated cattle. We'll talk about progressive genetics, BQA, as well as the GAP program and what are some of those programs and how they add value to your calves. So let's jump into weight variation. I don't think it is any secret, but if your calves are very uneven and you're presenting them to sell, we saw a $1.65 a hundredweight discount when it came to very uneven lots. When you look at flesh, those cattle that are carrying heavy to medium flesh, you can see again they were discounted as well, $1.79 per hundredweight. So again, there's two things you can work on if you don't, is keeping those calves in pretty lean condition and not carrying a lot of flesh, as well as trying to keep them as even as possible. And there's a lot of different things you can do related to keeping them even, simply as sorting cattle into light groups and light weight and frame can help you a lot as it relates to not getting a discount. So keep that in mind. We're going to talk a little bit about these as discounts, and then we'll also talk about some things that add premiums. So when we look at steers versus mixed versus heifers, when we talk about this database, the steers brought back about $16 a hundredweight, and the mixed lots brought $6 a hundredweight over a base of a heifer. So just kind of give you an idea of where the database and where 2019 fell out. When we look at breed, I think these are some other things that you need to consider as it relates to the discounts that might happen as you take cattle to market. When you look at the national calf model, if they had any kind of mention of Holstein in them, they brought back $7.50 a hundred. If they had Brahman or exotic mentioned in their description, they brought back minus $3.76 a hundred. If they had Continental, wasn't as big, but they brought back 82 cents. And what the base was is we based that any mention of English or English cross. So no mention of Holstein, no mention of Brahman or exotic or Continental. So those weren't mentioned at all in the description. So they were either English cross type calves. And you can see some of the differences as it relates to Holstein, Brahman exotic, and Continental as it relates to the effect that breed does have when it comes to marketing your calves. And again, horns, if you're dehorned or polled, they have no horns, and that's how they were designated. There was a $1 premium per hundredweight when you look at that. So again, something to consider when you're thinking about bulls and you're thinking about some of the production practices you can have related to cattle without horns. So let's talk about some programs as it relates to the calf model and how those things impact potential value for your calves. So beef quality assurance. So I know we hear this all the time. We've got Texas Southwestern Cattle Raisers, Oklahoma Cattlemen's Association, different state associations. You've got Texas Cattle Feeders, a lot of different state associations, our extension agent people, people in the cattle industry like yourselves, professional cattle people. You see that beef quality assurance, we've been doing that for a long time, and so it still pays. It's good for the industry, it's good for the cattle, and it has a positive impact on sale price when you can identify whether they have their BQA or not. So something to consider. If you haven't gotten your training for BQA, I encourage you to do that. When we look at some of these other programs like non-hormone treated cattle program, you can see that there's a $2.19 per hundredweight premium. And one thing I want to point out when I'm talking about these prices are all assuming everything else is equal, and I'm looking at just the attribute that we're talking about. And so a lot of these attributes, if you have different cattle, you've got them, they don't have horns, they're steers, and they're in some type of program, those things can be additive. So don't lose sight of that. We're talking about each one of these programs and individually and how they contribute to premiums or discounts. So non-hormone treated cattle program, $2.19. Just keep in mind that I did not include the cost of those programs. I know these next two programs, NHTC as well as Global Animal Partnership, I know they have a cost. They require a third-party audit. They also require some other paperwork and some other qualifications as their USDA sponsored programs. And so they have some requirements that somebody has to follow through, and you have to be pre-qualified to be able to represent your cattle as such. And so the one thing I would also remind you, and I think if you look at the people that you're having helping sell your cattle, i.e. like Superior, that they can help guide you through those processes and understand the cost of those, as well as they can help you understand, do you have a buyer for those programs that are pretty specific for an end user? And so that's the other thing I would remind yourselves of is, as you go through these programs and go through all the things that it includes, make sure you have an end in mind of who's going to buy those cattle would be my recommendation. Progressive Genetics, those of you that might not be familiar with that, Superior has a list of participants that have superior genetics. It's different ranches, seed stock producers across the country. And so if you buy your bulls from those specific ranchers on those list of participants from a superior standpoint, then you can sell your cattle under the Progressive Genetics claim. And so it had a positive attribute of $1.10 per hundredweight when we look at the calf model. When we jump into these value-added health programs, I think it shouldn't surprise anybody. We compare it to a Vac 24, which is just one dose, say when they're young, less than 4 months of age. A Clostridial, a modified live, and a Pastorella, they get one dose. That's the Vac 24. And as you can see, when you go from Vac 34 to 45 to 60 to Precon, you can see there's a rise in the dollars per hundredweight. So again, these programs where we use 2 doses, or we do it prior to weaning, or we keep calves weaned at home for either 45 days as it relates to Vac 45 or 60 days as it relates to Vac 60. Vac Precon is also a 60-day program that they're weaned prior to delivery. You can see there's quite a few opportunities to increase value. And so when it comes to these VAC programs, I think you all have studied up on their value of down the system and preparing these cattle for moving as it relates from one place to another and getting them immunized, getting them parasitized, or not, get rid of the parasites. And so a lot of value there as it relates to 279, 597, 616, and 720 a hundredweight. And they do have costs, so you need to be aware of the cost of those programs that, as you all do as cattle producers, understand the return on investment. But there's some pretty good dollars per hundredweight as it relates to these VAC programs. These buyers are looking for those cattle that have been weaned and are ready to go when they get to the next place of destination. So keep that in mind. I just pulled these out because I'm assuming most of the people on this call might be, as it relates to Texas, Oklahoma folks. If you all are not part of that region, I apologize, but I just wanted to show you there's some differences by region. You can see in Texas, Oklahoma, the Vac 34 is pretty similar. Vac 45, Vac 60, and Precon, those averages in Texas and the Oklahoma region were actually greater than the overall national region, just to give you some ideas. And we've got that broken out into a lot of other regions as well. If you want to reach out to either your Superior rep or your Merck rep to get some more information, particularly if you're in a region other than Texas and Oklahoma. But just wanted to show you how it looks when you look at the regional analysis. When we look at breed, you can see that as well by a region analysis, a little more discount on the Holsteins in that Texas, Oklahoma market as it relates to the national market when it comes to a Holstein. You can see the Brahman and exotics are a little less, which should make sense for our region. Got a little more Brahman influence in our cattle in those states. And then Continental, there wasn't any difference than that English cross. So just give you some little differences there as it relates to regional results that gives you an idea of what we can do with the data, and if you so desire and want more information. When you look at these programs, pretty similar across the nation as well as in this region as it relates to the different programs. And so that kind of gives you an idea of the calf sale. So I think hopefully you learn some things there when it comes to calves, and we'll talk about it here in a little bit more. Maybe can answer some questions and give you some ideas. But you can see those calves. There's a lot of different things you can do to add value to those calves, and what those buyers are looking at is when it relates to frame and flesh and sex and breed, and some of those VAC programs that have a pretty big impact, as well as some of the things that don't have an impact, and that's something like as simple as implanting and getting 25 more pounds of gain. So we also looked at the feeder cattle. So this is not the wean calves. These are feeder steers and feeder heifers. There were 3,757 lots, again, across those same type of sales. Total head, a little less. There's about 350,000 plus. The mean weight being feeder cattle was 797, and the average price in 2019 was $137 a hundredweight. And so you can see some descriptive statistics there. And I'm not going to repeat all this because it's very similar to what we see in the calf model. Weight variation, less is better. So the more even they are, the better people are willing to pay more for them or not get discounted. Gender, of course, steers, mixed, and heifers run in the same logical order. Flesh, again, heavy is a discount. They want to see that light flesh to medium to light type of flesh, not that medium to heavy, medium heavy. So keep that in mind. Breed type fell out the same way. Holsteins discounted more than others, and then you have the little bit of discount on the Brahman exotics, and then obviously the Continentals and the English were pretty well at par. You can see Vac Programs as well in this national feeder model. I'll talk a little bit about that. They have the same as the calf program did in terms of Vac 34 being more than 24 and 45 being more than 34 and 60 being more than 45. So there's some similar ranges there. So in summary, again, weight variation, gender, flesh, horns being absent, that medium to large frame is more desirable than a small frame. You've got some breed type and some progressive genetics. DQA is important. Obviously, the VAC program is important. You need to understand the cost. Same with the NHTC and GA, the GAP program. There's some opportunities there to add some value. I just tell you that you need to understand the cost, and you need to make sure you have a buyer. And I know there's a lot of people that consign cattle to help producers sell their cattle to get the most dollars out of them. Those type of people can help you and put a plug in for Superior. They obviously know how to help people do that. Obviously we have access to their database and are able to educate other people beyond that. So think of them as you think about people to help you consign cattle. So with that, Weston, that ends my part of the talk. Hopefully I went through it and people see some things there that have some value and kind of see what buyers are looking for, particularly when it comes to animal factors as well as some of the program factors. And again, there's a lot of different things. I didn't say it on the feeder cattle, but when we looked at implanted with feeder cattle, actually there was a difference. The implanted cattle actually brought back a little more significantly from a stat standpoint than the non-implanted. It was about 88 cents a hundred. So again, just like the calves, the implanted cattle were not brought back the same money or even a little higher when it related to the feeder cattle. So something for you to think about as a technology application when it comes to generating some margin, whether it's a feeder cattle or a calf. There's about 25 pounds there. So with that, I'll answer any questions that I can. Thanks, Weston.
So, I have a couple of questions here that have come in, and I'll say this. If you've joined on the internet, you should be able to go down to the little icon that looks like a microphone. You can unmute yourself and then ask your question. And then I'd encourage you to mute your line again so we don't get any background noise. If you're joined over the phone, you can hit *6 on your phone. That will unmute your line, ask your question, and then again, please mute yourself back. With that being said, the first question we have here, Doc, is where do we learn more about the various programs that you describe as adding value to our cattle?
Yeah, so the simple answer is these were under the confines of the Superior sales program. So if you go to Superior Livestock Auctions website, they can show that there's a link of programs, and so you can go to the Superior Livestock Auction website, click on programs, and you can learn all about those different programs, particularly as it relates to some of the ones that are specific for them. When it comes to VAC programs, VAC 24, 34, 45, and Precon are all pretty similar and described by a lot of different places and when it comes to the number of shots. But I would suggest just something even like NHTC and GAP. They are USDA programs that are official. And so you can go and search NHTC and GAP and find them at the USDA website. But Superior does a really good job of summarizing. So that'd be my suggestion.
Thank you. I have one more question that came in here. What is the cost of having a prime vac in when I sell my calves?
Weston, you broke up. Can you ask that again, please?
Yes, sir. The question is, what is the cost of having a prime vac endorsement when I sell my calves?
Well, when you look at Prime Vac, it fits into those Vac programs, so it follows a Vac program, and so as it relates to the cost, it's the cost of the products themselves. So whether it's 2 doses of Vision or Calvary, or whether it's Vision 7 or Vision 8, I'm probably the last person that should be talking about prices, but you're looking at vaccination costs are probably on the I won't say the price, I'll just get in trouble, but it's the price of your vaccination, and it's depending on how long you wean those calves at home. If you go to longer days of weaning, obviously there's some care and some weaning, but in terms of getting cattle vaccinated and immunized, it's pretty inexpensive. I mean, I know a Vision is pretty inexpensive. Modified live 5-ways and a Pastorella are pretty inexpensive, and so when you look at it, it's probably less than, I'll get in trouble, but bear with me, audience, $5 for all the shots that you need, maybe $6, and so pretty inexpensive for what your opportunity is. Now, when it comes to the management of the weaning days, whether it's 45 or 60 days, if you add that onto it, then obviously there's some costs there that you'll have to determine on yourself.
Thank you. I have one more question here. Is a greater detailed study of this data set available?
The simple answer is yes. You can reach out to me, and I can help that person or persons that want to see more details. Absolutely. Again, and the way you can reach out to me the easiest is John, JOHN Hutcheson, HUTCHESON @Merck.com. So the simple answer is yes, and I'd be more than willing to share that and talk about it in more detail.
I don't think we have any more questions on the Q&A section or the chat, and I guess nobody wants to speak up, so we're going to conclude right there. Looks like that's all the questions for today. Be sure and tune in tomorrow for Raising Cattle Requires an Open Checkbook, which purchases have a return on investment. There are hundreds of products, services, and tools in an ever-changing marketplace. We'll go through a few supported by industry and university research that have proven time and time again to return money to your operation. Thank you and have a great rest of your day. We look forward to having you back tomorrow at 12:30 for another Noontime Knowledge brought to you by Merck Animal Health.